Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Om Atahemamasanyam pranamuchuhu tvangna udgayeti tateti tebhya esha prana udagayat te viduranena vaina udgatra tyeshyantiti tam abhidruta Papmana vidyan sayathashmanam ritva loshto vidvamang seta evang haiva vidvang samana vishvancho vineshu tato deva abhavan parasuraha bhavatyatmana Parasya devishan bhratrido bhavatiya enang veda. Text 7. Then they said to this vital force in the mouth, "Chant the Udgitha for us." "All right," said the vital force, and chanted for them. The Asuras knew that through this chanter the gods would surpass them. They charged it and wanted to strike it with evil. But as a clod of earth striking against a rock is shattered, so they were shattered, flung in all directions, and perished. Therefore the gods became fire, etc., and the Asuras were crushed. He who knows thus becomes his true self, and his envious kinsman is crushed. Then they said to this, pointing it out, vital force in the mouth, having its seat in the oral cavity, "Chant the Udgitha for us." "All right," said the vital force to the gods who sought its protection, and chanted, etc. All this has been explained. The Asuras wanted to strike it, the vital force in the mouth, which was free from taint, with evil, the taint of their own attachment. Having succeeded with the organ of speech, etc., they, through the persistence of that habit, desired to contaminate it too, but perished or routed. How? This is being illustrated. As in life a clod of earth striking against a rock, hurled at it with the intention of crushing it, is itself shattered or crushed to atoms, so were they shattered, flung in all directions, and perished. Because it so happened, therefore, owing to this destruction of the Asuras, that is, dissociation from the evils due to natural attachment, which checked the manifestation of their divinity, by virtue of taking refuge in the vital force in the mouth, which is ever unattached, the gods, the organs that are under consideration, became, what? Their own divine selves, fire and so forth, to be mentioned later on. Formerly also they had been fire and so on, but with their knowledge covered by natural evil, they had identified themselves with the body alone. On the cessation of that evil, they gave up their identification with the body, and the organ of speech and the rest realized their identity with fire and so on, as taught by the scriptures. And the Asuras, their enemies, were crushed. The sacrificer of a past age who is mentioned in the story, coming across this Vedic allegory, tested in the same order the deity of speech and the rest, discarded them as stricken with the taint of attachment, identified himself with the taintless vital force in the mouth, and thereby giving up his limited identification with the body only, as represented by the organ of speech and the rest, identified himself with the body of Viraj, his present status of Prajapati, which, as the scriptures say, represents the identification of the organ of speech, etc., with fire, and so on. Similarly, the sacrificer of today, by the same procedure, becomes his true self as Prajapati, and his envious kinsman, the evil that opposes his attainment of the status of Prajapati, is crushed. A kinsman is sometimes friendly, as for instance Bharata, but the evil due to attachment to sense objects is an envious kinsman, for it hides one's real nature as the self. It is crushed like the clod of earth by one's union with the vital force. Who gets this result? He who knows thus, that is, like the ancient sacrificer realizes his identity with the vital force described above.
Namaste. So the gods tried everything to get this Udgitha chanted. All the organs became contaminated because they kept some portion, in fact the majority, of the results of the sacrifice for themselves. And only like 1/3 or 1/4 or something was shared with the other organs. So naturally, that was unable to help them overcome the outnumbered demons. Why are they outnumbered? Because it's the natural tendency of the sense organs to focus and become attached to the sense objects. That's just what they do. So something more powerful than the sense organs is required to keep away this evil influence that makes us forget our actual nature and fall down into material consciousness. See, this is the mechanism behind the attachment and the detachment from material consciousness. So then, what is the detachment? It's when we identify with the prana. Prana is moving air. The body is a pneumatic machine, and also electrical and muscles and so on. But muscles pull, air pushes, and that is the secret to the body's movement. Breath is the root of everything. So that's why the moving air, the prana, specifically prana refers to the incoming breath. This is necessary before you can do anything. Speak, move, eat. Well, you can eat, but you can't digest without this air, oxygen. This is the fire that digests the food. It has to be fed not only with fuel, but with oxygen. So anyway, we all know that breath and life are so closely associated that we say when a person takes their final breath, that becomes a euphemism for death. So the vital body, the prana sharira, the linga sharira, or the pranamaya kosha, these are all names for the energy body, the body made of vital breath. And there are several different kinds of it. We're not going to go into all those details, but the point is not to identify with the sense organs, but with the vital breath that powers them. This is the secret. And this is how the gods overcame the demons and successfully chanted the Udgitha. And this restored them to their natural condition, identified with the 5 elements. Fire for speech and so on. So in this way, we can also achieve the same thing. We can overcome our natural tendency to attach to material objects through the senses and reach the subtle plane then real thinking becomes possible, meditation becomes possible. So many things, knowledge, realization, etc., that are not possible as long as we identify with the gross body. This is the secret. We've been talking about pratyahara a lot, and this is how it works. It works through identification with the subtle body, the subtle senses. The sight is different from the eyes. The hearing is different from the ears. How do we know this? In a dream, we see and hear, but we're not seeing and hearing with these eyes and ears. We're moving about, but it's not with this body. It's with the dream body. And so many things happen, isn't it, that are impossible in ordinary consciousness, in physical consciousness. But in subtle energy consciousness, anything is possible. This represents a dramatic increase in our possibilities of being and consciousness. And this is the level of bhakti yoga. In our chart of the 4 states of consciousness, we see that the external dualistic Jagrat consciousness is associated with performance of rituals, such as the Udgitha, such as the Jyotishtoma, of which it is a part. But then, when one identifies with the prana, the subtle body, all of a sudden, svapna consciousness becomes active. And we can dream, and we can see things and think things that we never could think, that we are not capable of being in the gross body. So this is how we restore our original consciousness, or at least it's the first step. We want to become identified with Brahma. And the problem is now we are identified with the body and the senses and the sense objects. So how do we remove that identification? How do we dissolve it or pull it back? Through identification with prana. Because the senses are ultimately prana in their subtle forms. Seeing, hearing, speaking, etc., can only happen with the influence or function of prana. So prana, therefore, is the root of all the senses. And because of this, it's stronger than any of them or even all of them combined. So through the power of prana, we can disidentify with matter and then focus our attention on our real self within. And this is the first step of yoga, actual yoga. The exercises are just so you can sit nicely. Once you can sit, then what do? Pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses from their objects. See, this all fits together. So the Upanishads are giving the method. They're giving the technique, how you withdraw from the senses. And it's by identification with the prana. This is why Buddha, for example, taught mindfulness of the breath, anapanasati. What is it called nowadays? Vipassana, like that. But the method is the same. Consciousness identified with the breath rather than the gross body. Now, I want to bring up a different subject, actually a much bigger idea here, which is that the whole concept of the sacrifice and the sacrificial animal, the horse in this case, which leads to identification with Virat, Hiranyagarbha. This is also the ultimate aim of yoga. And it can be attained through rites when the rites are accompanied by meditation. And this is going to be a theme in Bṛhadāraṇyakopaniṣad, that the rites alone cannot give the highest result. And we see it in practice. A while ago, when I was on the other side of the island participating in extensive rituals, I noticed that I was the only one who was meditating during the rituals. Everybody else was focused on the externals, which, are elaborate kind of pageantry and, is pretty cool sometimes, But the ultimate purpose of it all is to help us concentrate on the within. The prana sharira, the subtle body. And by this means, withdraw our senses from the external objects and focus them on the self within. This is the whole thing. I mean, this is the aim, right? So when they make a big ritual like this, big elaborate ritual, why isn't anybody taking advantage of it and meditating on Udgitha, Om? Now, this is because everyone has become over-specialized. The pujaris only do puja. The meditators only meditate. The karma yogis only work. I mean, it's really crazy. But to realize the self, we have to realize all of that. Because that is all part of who we are, what we are. That's why on the good old consciousness chart, we show the 7 chakras and which parts of the human functioning participate in or are directed by or included in or are objects of which states of consciousness. So this is something you should download and study and make your own, because when you view life through this lens of consciousness, everything makes sense. Aum Tat Sat. Aum Shakti Aum. Aum Namah Shivaya.